How you doing?
I'm good.
Hey, my name is Konata,
What up? What up? What up? My name is Amanda. Small
and you are now tuned into our
Small
Small
World
World podcast.
Podcast.
Yes. So we're gonna jump right
Jump
in.
right in.
You said you saw a tweet the other day. Tell me about this tweet. Instagram. What was it? There's 7 million people in the world.
It was a meme. It says, "Oh man, that's not."
Is that what it was?
It says there's 7 billion people in the world, and I've got 2 friends. I said that's my life. It's me.
That's you?
Yes, that's
Am I one of those friends?
No.
Oh, that's good. So you got some friends.
I got 2
outside.
more.
2 more.
So I got 3.
Listen, I love you. Okay.
I know you do.
All right. Hey, so
Friends, how many of us have them? What about your friends?
there we go. Because one of those songs is 10 years before the other one that you
People
just
know
did.
those songs now.
I don't know if people know Friends. How
What?
many of us love them? Like,
Come
what
on,
we
you're
talking
from
about?
New York. You should know that song.
I know, but I'm saying that's an old song. I didn't hear that song until I was here. You know what I'm saying? In beautiful sunny Florida. Anyways, so I keep hearing this term, code switching. And I don't really know what it means. Explain it to me. Maybe I know what it means, but what is it? Where does it come from?
What do they
Where's
call you at work? So your name is Konata.
My name is Konata.
But what do they call you?
Small.
Konata Small.
And my real name
But your real name
is
is.
long. I'm
Okay.
not gonna go there.
So what do they call you at work?
So at work, I chose to go by the name Ken.
Why?
Because at work, the type of job that I do, I'm calling people all over this country. You know what I'm saying? And Konata doesn't lend itself to a lot of ears, in different parts of the country. I'll just leave it at that. And what it does, like people say, well, why don't you just use Konata? And when people find out my real name, and when I mean people, I mean clients that I work with, they be like, yo, this is a beautiful name, or Konata is such a nice thing. Why don't you use your name? And then I'm always like, well, because the conversation just ends up being longer than it needs to be, or it can get, it can get derailed real quickly. Because people get upset, right? Like when they're talking to people and they're like, and they don't believe that the person is in America. And my name, because it's a West African type name, they'd be like, yo, like, I just to save myself all that. And obviously there's some other things. I don't want to get into this. There's some other things, like, I don't want to give anyone some excuse to prejudge who is on the other side of the phone based on my name.
So hence you code switch.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Code switch. That means
So you call yourself Ken.
So I
You
make
make it-
myself more universal
You
for
make
this
it
world that
easier
I
for
live
other
in.
people
For other
instead of
people.
just being who you are.
Come on. That sounds whack. That
Well,
sounds
being
like
your
I'm
name.
doing something like, that sounds like I'm doing something
Well, I mean, that's what code
false.
switching is. Code switching is, you're not being your authentic self. Like you're going into these environments and you're feeling like you have to change your voice, change how you talk, how you, if I have a very up north accent, right? Feeling like I have to try to change my voice and be like, oh my God, like, thank you so much. And hey, Jasmine, and what's your name? Oh, my name is Amber, but my name is actually Amanda and my last name is Salas and I'm Puerto Rican and I sound like it, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want people to think I'm Puerto Rican. So, hey guys, oh my God, like, and that's code switching. Code switching is feeling like you've got to change to fit the room.
I think isn't that more like adapting to your environment? Isn't that
Why
more?
should I have to adapt?
I think you're supposed to adapt to any environment. That's just being smart and being wise, right? Like, not to go biblical, but Paul, right? He says, I became all things to all men. So when he's speaking to people that are philosophers, that's the vantage point he's going to speak to them from. He knows.
Yeah, but that's different.
How?
That's
Explain.
different because you're speaking, when you're going in the biblical route, code switching is not being your authentic self. Paul was still being his authentic self. He was just speaking to them in a language that they spoke or whatever. But for me personally, like I don't personally feel like I need to go into a room and change how I dress. I don't feel like I need to change how I speak. I don't feel like I need to change any of that to still be able to reach the people that's in the room with me.
Right.
The reason why I can reach the people that's in the room with me because I'm able to align myself with what they're, if I'm sitting at a table with people who are talking about tech stuff. And if I'm confident in what I know about tech, then I'm going to speak about tech. I shouldn't have to change my voice to fit into their mold.
Right. So with me, right, the code switching, the Ken thing, right?
Hi, this is Ken.
I don't change my
Ken.
accent. I don't change the way that I talk or any of that, or the way that I am when I was going into the office. It's just the name, Ken. So is that fully code switching, or is that more?
I think it's a part of it.
It's a part of it.
I think we've all done it though. Like we've all.
You had an instance, remember? And I remember this story.
I used to have a job. It was a corporate job, and I was younger. So, the group of people that we worked with, we were all very young, and so the department I worked with, we worked closely with the CEO of the company. This was a very big company, and so we used to do a lot of presentations with the company, and so. I'm just me, right? Like I got big curly hair. I'm loud. Back then, I think I had a way more of an up north accent than I do now. Like I think my accent has changed now that I've lived in Florida for so long. But back then, like my accent was thicker. I just sounded Puerto Rican. But I was just very confident in who I was. Which is what they loved about me. And so I remember, I was doing a presentation one day. And the presentation went well, and I'm young, like I'm one of the youngest ones in the room with these executives. And when I came from the meeting, someone in my department, we went outside, and he was like, "Hey," and he asked me, he was like, "Why do you talk like that?" And I was like, "Talk like what?" And he questioned like my whole identity, like, "Why do you just sound very yo yo yo?" And I was like, "What?" And I didn't really understand what he was saying. Because to me, I'm just being me. And he says, you're in the room with all these executives. You should have a little bit more. I think he said poise or something like that. Anyway, he was pretty much just telling me that the way I spoke was improper. That I shouldn't be speaking so assertive. That I shouldn't be so. You sound very Latina. You sound very Latina. And I'm like, that's what I am for corporate America. And so it messed with my confidence. So I was like, dang, maybe he's right, And then when I started looking around, I was like, yo, facts. Like I'm only it's predominantly white people here, and man, maybe they don't really understand me, or man, maybe I'm offending them. So I kind of went down this whole thing. Yeah. And so we had to go back and do another presentation. And I went with my boss. And I remember when I went, I started doing the presentation. I was so not confident because now I've got this thing in my mind. I changed my voice. I changed how I looked, like the way I'm presenting. I was just so out of my element. Yeah. And my boss is looking at me like, "Are you okay?" In the middle of this presentation, that even one of the executives was like, "Hey, do you need a minute?" Wow. And I got so flustered in the conversation, and I just told my boss, I was like, "Yeah, I need a minute." And so we ended up going down, back into our office. They were like, we can reconvene or whatever. And we went to the office, and my boss was like, "What's going on with you?" And I said, "Man, I just don't know, what they think of me." He was like, "What are you talking about? They love you." And I'm like, "Well, so-and-so said." And he was like, "What?" So I told him what he said, and my boss lost it. Yeah. And so my boss went and got the guy and told him to come in. He was like, "Don't you ever." And so my boss, and this was a great leader, right? That he was able to speak my confidence back into me and say, "Hey, don't ever change who you are. The reason why I've allowed you in that room is because of who you are. Yeah. So don't come in trying to be so-and-so. The reason why I've allowed you to sit at this table is because I like your personality." And even the CEO of the company used to stop me in the hallways and tell some of the executives and say, "Hey, she's exactly what we reflect here at our company." And so since that day, that was the last day I ever changed who I was. And if people know me, y'all know I'm going to walk into a room and I'm going to be who I am. And it's not a disrespectful thing. I've just learned I'm confident in who I am.
Yeah. And that was good for you because it was fresh out of college. I mean, that experience couldn't have happened earlier.
Corporate,
super, super duper corporate America, one of the leading companies in the country. Yeah. Right, and you're there. So that's dope because I was watching this show.
And I will say I'm grateful
that it happened.
That my boss did that. And my boss was a middle-aged white guy. Now, he was from Europe, right? So he a little different too. And so, I was super grateful that he took that moment to speak that into my life, you know, and it changed the course for me. And then a lot of the people we worked with, because there was a bunch of us, we were just young, you know, just young kids, you know, dealing with $1 million accounts and stuff. And we learned how to maneuver confidently in who we were. And I was always grateful for that. So as years have gone by, I've seen people do it. And so now I try to make sure I speak that into people.
Be yourself.
People, Be yourself,
you know? And we've communicated that to young adults. We've communicated that when we did music. It was always about being yourself. I was watching this show on HBO. I won't name the show. But in the show, they're in an attorney's office. And there's a new attorney that comes in. And she's just very loud, boisterous.
Oh, yes.
Has an opinion. And the person that was there before, which is also a minority, sees her come in and just was watching her move. And then kind of gets offended by it. Like, she's like,
come on, we can't both
chill,
be the,
right.
you know,
so
we the only two.
We're the only two in here. So she actually takes it upon herself to have a conversation with the girl.
As if she's doing her a favor.
As if she's doing her a favor. And then the girl is just like, I forgot what her response was, but towards the end of the episode, she's like, you know, like, I listened to you, but I shouldn't have listened to you, because she did the same thing. Made herself uncomfortable by being somebody she wasn't. But she got hired under all those, you know, I guess not flaws, but character enhancements, who she was. She was who she was. So I think that's very interesting.
And then if you actually look at those characters, the one who's saying it to her, she's actually the one that's code switching.
She's actually the one that's code switching. So I think it's interesting, but I would say most of this and the conversation we have is because, you know, people that do it, right? You're trying to avoid uncomfortable conversations. You're trying to avoid things that we know are part of societal, quote unquote, norms unfortunately. So back to what we're really talking about. We're talking about race. You know, I am a black Jamaican, got some Chinese from way back in Wagwan, American man. You know, that's who I am. You are a Puerto Rican.
Boricua.
100%. Beautiful. You know what I'm saying?
J-Lo's my cousin.
But you're American though, right? Because Puerto Rican is America.
That was funny. You're American too, though.
I know. It's messing with you.
He likes to take digs like he's different, but I actually speak my language.
I speak Jamaican.
You fumbled. Wagwan, mayot.
Anyway, so
it's not even a real language.
It is broken English. We have very strong upbringings, very strong cultures. It's in our foods. And we have children that are now because we're both minorities, right? Jamaican, Boricua. Go ahead, my bad. I messed it up.
Just say Puerto Rican, babe.
Puerto Rican. I'm sorry. Jeez, I'm messing up all kind of ways on here. We have mixed children. And we've had to have certain situations, certain conversations with them that, you know, most of our friends that are Caucasian have not had to have, you know, especially when, you know, the things was happening. It was all over the news during COVID. You had George Floyd. There were so many things that was happening that at one point we thought, okay, well, we have some time to have these kinds of conversations. And, you know, our daughter Zoe, she's very, very perceptive. Right? So she gets things already. She's 11 years old now. But our son, you know, at the time he was he 7 or was he 6 when this
was last year? So 6 years old. He was
6 years old, you know, and we just wasn't ready for it. We were prepared for it. There's a big difference.
We had just had a conversation about it.
We had just had a conversation about it.
And decided, I think we should just wait.
Yeah, we was like, oh, it's too early to be talking to these kids about this. Let them have their youth. Let them enjoy not knowing the difference between them and their lighter friends or the Asian friends or whoever, you know. And lo and behold, you know, social media, you know, the certain things that they watch, it came around. So you came home, and you can tell the story because I got the back end of it. You came and told me what he said to you. And I remember when you said it to me. What you tell me about that?
So, you know, I think I was in the room and Zion came in and he was like, you know, Mommy, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah. And he came and he sat next to me. He says, you know, when I get older, is a police officer going to kill me too? And I was like, and my heart just dropped because I'm like, what just happened? Like,
Yeah.
what would make him ask me this? Then I got upset because that means somebody showed him what just happened.
Yep.
I felt like, because we had just had the conversation about waiting, I felt like somebody took away a moment from us.
Yes. Yes.
That should have been a moment that we chose to have that conversation with him. And then as a mother, it's like, this is my son. How do I protect him, but how do I still give him truth, right? And so, of course, immediately I told him absolutely not.
Yeah.
That's because at the same time I don't want my son to have this false idea of police officers either, especially where we live, in the neighborhood that we live in. We live around nothing but police officers, right? And I consider it a blessing for us.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I do. And we've been able to get to know our neighbors, and I don't want my kids to now fear the guy that they give high five to all the time, right?
Yeah.
Young guy, white guy, great guy. Do I know him personally? No, but like, for me, that's just not a fear that I want to instill into my son. And so when he said it, it just, I don't know, I just had like a ton of emotions that kind of came over me. And I said, man, like, now we're being forced to have this conversation with him sooner than what we wanted. And I felt like my son is about to be robbed. There's going to be something that's going to happen when we now have to have this conversation with him. Yeah. That's just what it is, right? When you expose your children to something of that stature, of now speaking to his identity, his culture, what he looks like, there's a piece of innocence, unfortunately, that is going to be lost. And now we're the culprits of it because somebody decided that they should share something with my son,
right,
that they shouldn't have. And so, and then too, I was like, this is a conversation that his father needs to have, because at the end of the day, my husband is a black man in America. We've both encountered, we've both encountered racism and stuff. But for me, it was, as a man, I need you to explain this to my son, who will one day be a man.
Yeah.
And so, that's when I came to you, and then we sat down with the kids and.
Yeah. And, I still remember, and without getting too emotional, I won't do it. But I remember when we had the conversation. I will say this: in months prior, I had been having conversations when things was happening before the George Floyd thing happened. Years before, because it was happening all the time. It happens every year, many times. But one of the highlighted times that it happened, we was talking about it at work. And one of my coworkers, good friend, I'm gonna mention his name because he would like me to do that, Ronnie O. He was like, "Yo, he said, man, I don't get it, man. I love black people. I love all kinds of people. He's a white Jewish guy from New York. He's awesome. He's funny, hilarious. But like anyone, he has his own, upbringing. He has his own, and when people think about systematic racism, that's a strong term. Is it a true term? I think it is, but let's take that off of the conversation and just say systematic programming. I think all of us have systematic programming where we've been programmed by what we watch, by what comes through the media, social or otherwise, that, tell us to react certain ways to certain scenarios. You're at an ATM, someone comes behind you with a hood, doesn't matter, you can't see their face. You're going to be a little bit less likely to just put your code in. Just normal stuff, movies, so on and so forth. So, just talking with him, he's like, man, I just, I don't understand, he said, but, sometimes I feel like, certain things, warrant certain reactions. If you're going to walk around with your pants sagging and, you get pulled over by a police officer and you're in the wrong part of the neighborhood or the right part of the neighborhood, but you look, quote unquote, like a thug. And we even had to go through that, thug. Thug is a word that's only used with black men. Yep. It's not used, you never hear white thug or any of those kinds of things, or you don't hear it that often. So anyways, we're going through that, we're dissecting, and I love it because, I'm able to learn from his perspective and he's able to learn from mine. The interesting side is that he's going to learn more from my side. Why? Because I see more of his side. It's on TV. If that makes sense. More of the
And just a sidebar, I think what's dope about y'all relationship is that you've learned a lot from his Jewish side.
Yes, absolutely. Because he would say things like, my people suffered from one of the largest known, slavery from Moses, and one of the most genocidal situations from the Holocaust. And his grandmother was living in a, Holocaust above, like in a basement for like 8 years. She did not even stand up straight. So anyways, so going through all that with him, and I remember finally we got to this conversation, and I had heard D.L. Hewley say it, so I won't take it away from him. He said, the conversation that I have to have with my son, he said, I asked him, I said, Ronnie, when you were growing up, did you have to tell, or when your kids was growing up, he has 3 boys. So when they were growing up, did you have to tell them how to react with police? And he said, no. I said, if a police officer pulls them over, is there anything there so you tell them to do? No, I just tell them to be nice. I said, okay. He said, I said, police, is that something that you tell your kids to do? Like as soon as they get in trouble, call the police? He's like, yeah. I said, see, the conversations that you have with your son is going to be different than mine. And I began to tell him what I have to tell my son.
Yeah.
And now I'm replaying all that to go back to what we're talking about. I'm about to have this conversation with my son after he's just asked his mom such a question. And the fact that he didn't ask me that just is telling, because I'm more of a harsh, I'm a father. Like I'm a man. I give him that man's love where my wife is the nurturer. She's going to be there. So I know it came from his heart. It wasn't just like he asked me very educational questions. He's going to ask her things about his heart. Like, I'm dealing with this. Yeah. Like, what do I do, Mom? So that's how I had to handle it with care. And, we had to tell him, like, we live in this area. Like my wife said, we have police on this side. So we're in this, environment where there are nothing but police around us. And everyone treats us wonderfully, as we treat them as well. So I had to tell him that even though that statement that he said is false, because it has nothing to do with him, has nothing to do with his worth and his value, I just had to break down the fact that sometimes you're going to be the victim of being misjudged. And for that reason, you have to be a little more aware of your surroundings. And that's the biggest thing in our house, like being aware of where you are, being aware of your just where you're at. And I think that is what goes back to this code switching thing. Yeah. Because that's what it's all about. It's about like, where am I right now? Can I really let my hair down and go nuts?
Or do I got to be careful?
Yeah, or do I got to be careful in what I say? know? Yeah. So just teaching him that and going through, and it was the, I don't know if I've had a harder conversation with anyone. Like me and you have had very hard conversations, but I speak to you and we're grown folks, right? To speak to a young boy at 6 years old who's just getting into life about the fact that he may be misjudged based on his own things he can't even control is just a tougher conversation. But in the same light, I also had to tell him that because he doesn't want that, he's also responsible for the way that he judges others. So when he sees a police officer, when he sees a white person in authority, it's not his job to think that they're always against him. Yeah. But it's tricky. It's tricky. Because even though they're not always against you, I heard it in a show I watched the other day, even though they're not always against you, and hopefully 90% of the time, 95% of the time, they're not against you, but that 5% that might have misconceived thoughts based on their own past and how they were brought up about how black people are or whatever, just because that exists out there, you have to be ready for it and not surprised by it. Yeah. And that's what the guy said in the movie. He said, listen, I'm good. Like, I work with anyone, but I'm not going to be surprised if this person does something. And it's weird, because that sounds like, oh, well, you're telling them to love, but not love all the way. And I can't really explain it because we want them to love. This is a Christian household. We want them to pray for their enemies. We want them to, the night that the George Floyd thing happened, my wife knows that, I was praying for the police officer as well. I was praying for all of them. Why? Because they need God just as much as the rest of us do. But what happened still happened. It doesn't separate the fact that that was a hateful crime and based on a lot of stereotypes and, again, systematic programming.
And I think the dope thing was there was some positive, we did have the conversation with both of them, Zoe and Zion. He didn't ask a lot of questions because he was 6, right? Like, I think he's just trying to process, like, well, you're telling me they don't like me because of my skin, that's kind of as far as he got. But I think as time started passing, because he asked several questions, as the weeks followed, and, he would just ask these random questions. And I just started seeing like, wow, this is something that he's really thinking about. And it was bothering me as a mother, it was like, man, I don't want my son to feel like this. And I remember we had a conversation with the both of them, and we told them, what's important is that you always be an ally to people, right? Now my kids are blessed. We live in South Florida, right? So we understand that it's not most of America. And sometimes, I'll be honest, we forget, the diversity that we have out here is not normal to America, right? As a whole. Like, my kids go to a diverse school. Like, their friends, they have all type of friends, right? Like, the school that they go to right now, they just started a new school. Like, most of my teachers, my kids' teachers are like Black and Hispanic. I was like, let's go. Like, I didn't have that growing up. Like, I didn't have anyone that looked like us, So for my kids to experience, like, their friends are Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Indian, like Haitian, Jamaican, like they're experiencing this melting pot of diversity. And so for me, it's, I want them to understand that you always be an ally, right? You see something that's happening to somebody that is not right, you defend them.
That's good.
Right? And so what I've loved now that Zion is 7, about to go on 8, he has embraced being I hate using the word minority, but that's what we are, right? But he has embraced being Black, right? And every so often you'll hear him, I'm a Black man. And I'm like, what? And part of me is just like, yeah, buddy, you're Black. But, and I'm like, where does that come from?
Yeah.
And part of me wants to be like, buddy, stop doing that. But then it's like, you know what? Yeah, that's like good. Embrace who you are. This is who you are, The other day he went into the Spanish class. They had a Spanish class, and his teacher asked him something, and the way he responded, he was like, oh, you have a great accent. He says, oh, my mom's Puerto Rican. I'm Puerto Rican. And like, he's proud of that, And so that's where I want my kids to be proud of who they are. I want them to be proud of how they're being raised, but understanding that, and this is the tough part, is that the world that we live in, there's just certain things that are set up for them to not succeed. And like, he's growing locks. And
I was gonna say,
it just, and I don't ever want to tell my kid like, nah, don't grow locks because I don't want anyone to misjudge. No, I'm gonna just be who you are. And as a mother, I just gotta pray that we raise him to be someone who is of value to the society. And then I just gotta pray that he's protected. This is just unfortunately the world we live in, and it's tough though. But I remember having that conversation growing up with my dad. And I'm a female.
Yeah.
My dad was like, listen, you got mad strikes against you already. Like, first of all, you're a girl. Second, you're Spanish. And he's like, and third, you're a Christian. So go live life. It's just like, what? But I remember my dad having that conversation with me very early in life. And my dad was very honest with my stuff. My mother she's lighter skinned. So, but my dad was darker. And ironically, I'm the darkest one in my family, like amongst my cousins and stuff like that. So there was just certain conversations that I remember my dad having with me, like, hey, these are going to be this is a truth that I need you to understand. Like, your life is not going to be as easy as probably your brother, because your brother's a boy. But your brother's going to have struggles because he's Spanish, right? Some of your friends that you have, they're going to be ahead of you just because they're not Spanish, they're white. And I remember not understanding that. Like, well, what makes them different? What makes them better than me? Right? Like, what makes them better than me? I'm better than them at this. I can ball better than them. I can do this better than them. Like, they're not smarter than me. They're not. And I didn't get it till I got to like high school, and I was like, oh, got it.
Yeah.
And it was in high school that I started to understand, like, oh, this race is not fair. And so, but I never, for me, I tried to never let it deter me from defining who I was. Like my race was just going to be my race.
Yeah.
And so, but that's tough. That's not everybody, you know, everybody. And I think the way our society, unfortunately, is set up, going back to the code switching, right, is we've created these things that has caused insecurities in us that makes us feel like I have to go in a room and I gotta change.
You know, when you're in those rooms, I learned to that it's a strength. If you allow it to be that in your brain, it'll be a strength. And I learned that when I was traveling. You know, I traveled, you know, and I'm rapping. I had dreads, you know, like I'm the token
They're like, can I touch your
black
hair?
person,
Remember?
and I was in places where they had never seen a black person.
Yeah.
I went to Russia, Lithuania, Slovakia, all these places in Eastern Europe, among many others. And I remember that those things actually became favor. You know, I would walk into a certain place, and I had the whole crowd's attention because they had never seen anyone like me before. And then I, you know, fast forward and I'm in Africa and I go to a little convenience store out there. And, you know, again, I'm looking like me, doing my thing, but I'm American, clearly. But I go to this convenience store and the guy in front of me is about to be serviced by the cashier. The cashier is the owner of the store. He's a white African, right? And I mean, just the way he was just talking to this guy, it was just disgusting, you know, just his attitude and his nastiness, like, get out of my store, are you done yet? Like that's the kind of stuff he was. And I was there, I was boiling up, right, watching it happen. But I'm learning that this culture is not new.
Yeah.
You know, and it is worldwide, which is a very sad thing, but it is, you know. So I get to the front of the line, and you know, the guy's looking at me. He doesn't know where I'm from. He's assuming that I'm just another black African man. And I'm like, hey, how you doing?
Because you got that West African name.
Yeah.
Konata. Yeah.
I'm like, oh. I'm like, yes. Hey, how you doing? Hey, I mean, his whole demeanor switched up. I had never seen anything like it. It was like, Brand, where are you from?
You're American.
I was like, oh, I'm from Florida, you know. He's like, oh, I've been to Disney
I am from
World.
America.
Yeah,
That's how you should have said. I am from America.
And yeah, his whole demeanor switched up. I was now a higher classed, more approved black man that was in front of him, just because of I spoke, or just because I spoke English or whatever. And I just remember leaving from traveling to all those countries, and I went to 17 of them, and I'm saying that for a reason, because when I came back, I found out the harsh truth is, the darker your skin complexion, the shorter the end of the stick is for you across the world, or the world that I had seen. But in the same respect, I also found out that there is strength in confidence.
Yeah.
Because I knew who God had made me. I mean, all that was mission trip, and God was talking to me the whole time, and I was learning about who I'm called to be. I was learning, you know, that this music thing is going to be a part of my life for a long time. I was learning that, you know, I have a voice. You know, I can speak. I'm more than a conqueror. All these things positioned me that when I came back, like, I was just good. Like, no matter where I was, and every job that I had after that, I excelled.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just because of that same thing that you're talking about, that confidence. And that is what we try to teach our kids, even with education, right? Like, you know, in normal households, you know, the education thing is, hey, and not that we don't want our kids to be educated. Obviously, we want them to go as far as they can in their educational calling. And what I mean by that is, if they're not called to be a doctor, there's no reason for them to go to med school. I don't want to put pressure on them to be a med student if that's not what the desire of their hearts, or that's not where, you know, the journey is pushing them. Do I fault it in any way? Absolutely not. I want them to do that. But if, like, you know, if our daughter is excelling in the arts, because she's a very creative person, she can sing already, she's so young, you know, is it going to be smarter to send her to MIT if she's struggling? And, you know, well, you gotta You got to get in there, right? So let's pick another school. Is it better to send her to someplace we aspire her to be in some nursing program, or is it better to get her in Berkeley to have her sing and try out?
Yeah.
To us, it's better to for her to get into Berkeley. So even with those, again, societal norms, because those are all societal programming, that you need this to do this. But I know so many people. I mean, goodness, we know so many people with master's degrees.
They're not using
and
them.
they don't do anything. They're working at Target, like, you know, and not that there's anything wrong with Target. Target's dope. Love Target. You know what I'm saying? But if you ask them when they were getting their masters, if that is where they were desiring to be, the answer 9 out of 10 times is going to be no. And that's all I mean by that.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a lot. It's a lot. You know, we're raising children. We're raising them to be strong Black and Puerto Rican children. And at the same time, we want them to be all that they're supposed to be without, I guess it's not a real without, but we don't want them to feel less than.
Yeah. And
anything.
I think every parent wants that for their kids, right? I think we've been blessed that we've traveled the world, so our worldview is very different than probably the average person, right? You know, I know for us, you know, we are an interracial couple, right?
Are we?
We forget that.
You was high yellow girl.
95% of the
red
time.
Bone. You a red bone.
I know down here people think I'm just Jamaican or what do they think I am? Trinidadian,
Pakistani.
Indian, Pakistani. I'm everything but. And so, but yeah, majority of the time we forget that we're interracial till we leave Florida.
Yeah.
And we go to another state and we're like, oh, yeah.
Yep.
Remember that time we went to
Oklahoma? Or was it Ohio?
No, it was Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
And we were with the guy and he says, what did he say? He was just like, so they promote interracial couples at your church or something. We were like,
well, there's two things that happened. We went there and somebody said something to us, not quite that, but then a person came to our youth group and saw us on staff. It was me,
oh,
you.
and they said it to like our friend.
It was,
or something like that, yeah.
Stacy and Kevin.
But what did the guy in Oklahoma say to us? Because it threw us off and we were like, what? And it took me a minute. Like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He said something
he was
about
something
us
like, you guys are married. Because remember, we used to travel as a group. People didn't know we were married until we got there.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are married. Oh, man. I would think it was you and the other guy, you know.
Yeah, they thought I was
like
that.
Because
Juan, what up? I love you. But they thought, they were like, I thought you guys would have been married.
You're Black and you're Puerto Rican. You guys are married. Good for you. Something like that. It was like, okay, thank you. 1970s call. They wanted to comment back. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was crazy. But it was just, that stuff is telling, you know, like it just tells that some people are just, it's still not, I don't know if the word's acceptable.
Yeah, and you know what I think too is that if we're being honest, right, it happens even within our own communities, right?
Yeah.
Because I've had experiences even with our own, you know, thankfully my family is not like that. You know, my grandmother was not like that, and her generation is the generation to be, you know.
And we were getting on that flight in Miami that one time.
And I was getting on the flight in that's where I was going. And I'm in Miami at the airport, right? Sitting to this cute little old lady, little viejita cubana, right? Cuban lady. And, you know, she's talking to me about her kids and, you know, just having this great conversation with her. And she reminded me a lot of my grandmother. And so she's talking to me. She's like, oh, you remind me of my granddaughter. And just having this lovely conversation.
Lovely.
We're about to be family and stuff. And so she asked me, I think it was I married or something. And I was like, no, not yet. I'm dating or whatever. And so I go to show her a picture of you. And she got so offended. And she's like, pero ¿cómo? Like how? And I was like, how what? Like, so I'm speaking to her in Spanish, right? And I'm like, how what? And she said, how dare you ruin your race like that? And I said, and she said, wow. Is your grandma still alive? And I said, absolutely. And how does she feel? I said, well, she actually loves him. And I had to tell that lady, I said, my family doesn't think like that. And I said, why would you think that there's something wrong with that? And I had to let her know, like, first of all, my family doesn't think that way. Second of all, I'm a Christian. So all that is out the window for my family. Like, we don't function that way, you know? I said, at the end of the day, like, this is a man of God. This is somebody who loves the Lord, who I know is going to love me. And he's going to treat my family well. Like, those are the things that matter. And I remember I was very stern, not stern in a disrespectful way, but I let her know, like, hey, what you're communicating is not proper. But I remember she was so offended. And you know what was crazy? She was dark. How you dark and mad at my dark husband? Like, and so, that type of stuff I've always, excuse me, that type of stuff when we're doing it to our own people, even within, Puerto Rican culture, there's a division there, right? Cuban culture, Jamaican culture, right? Haitians and Jamaicans, like we're all in this Caribbean culture, but yet I think I'm better than you and you better than me, and the left side of Jamaica thinks they better than the right side of Jamaica, and the people in the city of Puerto Rico think that they're better from the people in the campo, and it's just like, no, like, so I think it's everywhere, right? And we've created it in ourselves, and so it's tough when you're getting mad at people who are not part of our community doing it, and then you get into your own community and you experience it, and it's just like, and like I mentioned earlier, growing up, I was the darkest one in my family, so even within my family, I struggled with identity for a while because I didn't understand, well, why are they white? Like, why are they light skinned and I'm not? And my brother used to be like, yo, you darky, and you was adopted. And I was like, I didn't really, it was, when you're a kid, you're not really paying attention to those things.
Yeah.
And I remember my brother put his hand next to mine. And for whatever reason, I was definitely darker when I was little. But he put his hand next to mine.
Summertime.
And he said, look at how different we are. And we were so different. Like, I was like 5 shades darker than my brother. He said, look at my eyes. And my brother, God bless him, got blessed with these beautiful hazel eyes, right? He's got these beautiful hazel eyes.
Fair-skinned.
And he's, fair-skinned, whatever. And I was just like, and he told me I was adopted. And I was just like, and then he was like, look, pay attention. You're the only dark one. And I remember looking at my family and I was like, yo, he's right. And I struggled with that for so long, man. And then one day I finally went to my mom crying. And I was like, Mom, like, why didn't you tell me I was adopted? And, why am I so black? Bendito. And she said, what are you talking about? Who told you were adopted? I said, well, my brother. She's like, I'm going to kill him. And so my mom had to say, no, like, you're your dad's color. And so my mom was able to break it down. And I looked at my dad, and my dad came and put his hands next to me. And I was like, oh, I'm my dad's color. And I was like, oh, my dad became my hero. Because it was me and my dad, we were really the only the dark ones in our family. And so even dealing with that in my family, and we were kids, they didn't mean any harm by it. You're kids. You say stupid stuff to each other. And so, but it was something I struggled with for quite a long time, not understanding. And what's wild, Konata? Like, I liked being dark. Like, I loved being dark. And in the summertime, I used to get black. I was like, yeah. Like, I used to love it. And so for my brother, and again, my brother was young, so he didn't mean anything by it. Right. But, so for my brother to point out that I was different and it was bad, that for me, like, took away my life. It was like, oh, but I liked being dark.
Yeah.
And I remember asking my mom to buy me bleaching cream and all that stuff because, I wanted to look like them. And so, I struggled with identity for a while until I think really till I got to like older middle school age that I started realizing like, yo, being dark is dope, man. Get out of here.
There's so many, and for lack of a better term, so many shades of the different type of isms that are going on with this. Because even in the black community, there's everything from the skin tone that you are to the big one that Chris Rock talked about, which is hair, right?
Yeah.
So growing up, maybe towards my high school years, I started, because I had a flat top, high top for a long time, you know what I'm saying? And towards the end of my high school, I had a low cut. So when people saw my hair, they would say, man, you got some good hair.
I said that to you when I met you, remember?
Yeah, I got the waves without trying.
You was like, well,
I don't put no wave
I got
cap
Chinese.
on.
I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
And then I met your aunt. I was like, oh, snap.
And that's, so I tell people, like, I got some Asian in the, my grandmother was Asian Jamaican. Her grandmother was straight up, Chinese. So it came through. But
Good hair, yeah.
This idea of good hair is even a thing. You know, even when you sit around the lunch table, we used to do this thing where we just call we used to call it dissing in New York. When I moved down here, they call it cracking on each other. So we would sit and just talk about each other and your mama jokes, your mama jokes, your mama jokes. And we are the only culture that jokes on our complexion. Like, you know, your mama's so black. I remember this. Your mama's so black. If you pour orange juice on her head, she look like a cheeseburger. Like that was, and we would just go in on these jokes. But the black ones specifically, you've never heard in your life. Maybe now they'll say, "Oh man, you so white, like you transparent," or you know, we've heard some of that kind of crazy stuff between white people. But for the most part, they're not going into your mama jokes or those kinds of banter with each other, teasing each other on that level. We're the only people group that does that. You know, so we self-hate amongst ourselves. And you know, there's a lot of, you know, statistics that people use when it comes to this murder situation that, oh, well, you guys are killing each other, and I'm not going to get into all that because that's a whole nother thing.
On the other side of it though, right? I think with the mama jokes.
Okay.
I think like there's a beauty in that as well, right? Let's just keep it real. Like there's certain things that we can do amongst ourselves that's like permissible. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna talk this junk to you because we amongst family, right? We're gonna say these your mama jokes because I think that's just a community thing. That's a cultural thing, right? Good. Like if I want to get deep with it, right? Like we come from a history of racism and segregation and those type of things, and so our communities, you had to build your own safe haven, right? And so you kind of create your own culture within your culture, and so like, you know, it's like you and your sister. You can call your sister all type of names, right? Like, go ahead, big head, whatever. But let somebody else come and call your sister. Those is fighting words, right? I think it's the same thing amongst ourselves. Like, there's certain things that we can crack on each other. It doesn't make it right, but there's certain things that we've learned how to just embrace. And, you know, especially most of it, we grew up in the hood, right? So you kind of just deal with what you got. Like this whole challenge that's happening right now with the crates, only people from the hood think of stuff like that, right? And you watching like, damn, this is amazing. I wish I was back in Hall Manor right now, like so I can do the crate challenge. I'm not gonna do that here. I would never do that crate challenge. Can you imagine us doing that here in the front lawn? Our neighbors gonna be like, oh God,
I just want to be there to see people doing that.
But you go to the hood and you're like, yes.
Yeah.
So I think there's kind of a beauty that I don't know if I'm using the right word, but you get what I'm saying. Y'all get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think there's something that we've learned to just create. You take the scraps that you've been given, and you make lemonade. Yeah, and I think that is the thing that I love about our cultures is that our cultures is we come from a history of struggle, and so in our communities, we've learned how to survive. And so out of survival, we've gotten creative. And it's sad because I think our communities have created some amazing things that we have not gotten credit for. What you're saying is like some of it is we've learned how to create this almost self-hate. But then there's another side of it that is it self-hate? I think it's just we've learned how to love each other with insults.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is good because some cultures do it different. They do it, but they do it differently.
Look at Italians,
like Italians or Jewish New Yorkers. I
love
Jewish
listening to them. Remember when we went to Boston? It was like, yo,
we like this again. I'm going back to Ronnie. He tells me when his best friends come into town. He tells me how they talk to each other at the casino, and it's not endearing words
at all.
Yo, you this and you this and you a-hole, and like this is how they talk, but it's just. No,
that's like my dude.
It's that's my boy. Like, oh, that's the fluctuation in his voice on the a-hole.
Can tell me he's not really calling me
right. That like I'm his a-hole.
Like I'm his man. That's my man.
I'm his. Same thing. So, culture is very important. It's very important for us. It's very important for our children, and we just want to make sure that how we raise them echoes
Yeah.
that they can be.
And not just our children.
Proud,
I think just our community. I think the young adults that we work with, our friends. I think, I love the diversity in our friendships. As you may know, I don't know if you do, but we work in ministry at our church, and so that's a huge part of our lives. And so even navigating those conversations with the young adults I've enjoyed it. In this season, I've enjoyed having those conversations with our young adults, but not just them, even with our senior pastor. And I love that. I will say this about even our senior pastors, that our senior pastors, I've enjoyed their humility in this season, that they're okay with saying, hey, I just don't know. Can you just teach me? Right. I've loved their humility in that, where I've been able,
white.
They're white. Yes, they're white. And so, and it's, my heart broke for them in this season because they're missionaries, right? So they don't come from this American side of. They've been removed for so long, like it was different stuff they struggled with. Our pastor's wife, she speaks, I think, like 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know how many languages. So just where they come from, it's a different, right?
Yeah.
But them to understand, well, for me to have an honest convo with them and say, people don't know your backstory. All they see is that you're white, right? And for me, it was like, man, that stinks, because you are good people. You don't have this type of heart. But I've enjoyed the honest conversations with them that, hey, how can we be better? How do you guys feel? How are you guys walking through this? And how are your young adults handling that? And I think for me, that speaks volumes of their leadership. I think it helped me to feel like they do care, And I think having those conversations helps me to know, like, these are the conversations we need to continue having with people. I think the friendships that we have been amazing. Like I said, we have
full diverse,
all kinds of people, and all different opinions, right? All different opinions, and some of us are on one side, some of us are on the other, and I've enjoyed all those conversations, right? We have a really good friend who's a white guy who, he struggles with the idea of white privilege because his upbringing was trash.
Right.
And for him is like, how? And, and so hearing his heart behind why he's saying what he's saying, I get it. I get why you feel that, because you're right in a sense that, your upbringing was worse than, upbringing was worse than so-and-so's.
Yep.
But, and so just being able to have those conversations with our friends, I think, walking through this season, especially, we're always going to bring it back to our faith, right? We're Christians. And so we believe in a God who created all of us. And I look at scripture, and when it talks about heaven, it says every tribe, every language, every tongue will be there. And so for me, it's, man, like, what better place to practice that is here on earth? And are we all going to get along? Probably not, because we are different. But I think it's if we can find, and I sound like I'm talking about a kumbaya moment, but, I think that's the beauty of who we are as God's creation, is that if we can find the things that make us different and celebrate them instead of making those differences be something negative, right?
Yeah.
Well, we can find things that are in common, but, find some things that are different. And so, being able to just navigate that stuff with each other as a couple, I think even how, in our history of doing music together, and, we were in a diverse group, we were able to do all type of events. There was never a show that we went to go to do that I ever felt like, oh, we missed that mark. I never felt like we missed the crowd. But I think the way we created music, it fit for everyone. And we knew what area of the country we were going to. We knew what songs made sense for that area. And it never felt like, right?
Yeah.
Like, it never felt like people were coming to our shows and like, they just weren't for me. Like, it just, and so I enjoyed that about our group. I enjoyed that we've always been able to make music that was able to speak to many of group of people.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, like what you said, when we were traveling, going everywhere, and the way that we looked represented everyone, so everyone could see themselves on stage, you know? And I think that was important for the way that our particular music and ministry was playing out. You know what I'm saying? But going back to, the whole idea of, race and so on and so forth, I think it's wonderful that we celebrate our differences. I got a song called We the People, and it was recently used in the Smithsonian conference where they were talking about just bridging the gap and just opening up these conversations. And what I'm hopeful for is this new generation, because the new generation, they got their other issues, they're on social media and they're getting their feelings hurt and all that kind of stuff.
But this whole racial thing,
but this racial thing, they
may be the ones to actually heal this thing.
Yeah, to actually get this thing right and totally abolish some of the programming that we have.
If it's not this generation, it'll be Zoe's generation.
Yeah. That's the generation I'm actually, I'm actually, as the generations come, because there's more interracial children. There's more, norms, and there's just more things that they don't see any value in, that the generations before us had put so many values in. And one of the weirdest ideas is going backwards, and I'm going to say something here that may turn some people off, but the idea of making America great again, I get the concept behind it. Well, why would anyone want to go back? Let's make America greater than it's ever been. And I think that is what the upcoming generation has an ability to do. Make America greater than it's ever been. And I think that's what we should all strive
Always
for.
Forward movement. Yeah.
Always forward movement. So we will end it there. Hope you enjoyed. My name is Konata once again, and Amanda Smalls. And we're out. No, sound like a newscast. So what's up?
This was good.
What's something I could be better at this week for you, girl?
Let me sleep.
Let you sleep?
Yeah, let me sleep.
Let you sleep where? Like on the couch?
Just
anywhere?
Wherever I fall asleep, just leave me there.
I will leave you there. I
no,
can't,
you've actually
these kids though, you know what I'm saying? They jump up, they wake up early. I can't prevent them from waking you up.
Okay.
Like they be waking you up.
Yeah.
But you'd rather be woken up by them.
Yeah,
than
just
me.
not you. Yeah.
That's a whole nother podcast. Okay, so let you sleep.
What can I do for you?
What can you do for me?
What
can you do for me? You know what I'm saying? Just be great. Continue to be great.
Be greater than you were before.
That's
Boom.
it. Boom.
And on that note, thanks for hanging out with us. We love you guys.
Peace out. I'm going to say what my wife hates for me to say.
Do not say it, guys. Listen. Just
holla.
Hey. We love y'all. Have a great week. Be great. Love your people. You know what I'm saying? Don't say no mean your mama jokes. Anyway, love y'all. Peace. Thanks for joining us.
All right, peace out. Tell them we okay though.